Hello there, I'm Dominic St-Pierre and you're listening to Go Podcast. Today I'm joined by Markus Wustenberg and we talk about Gomponent. Hey, just before we start, I'd like to let you know that I just created a Go Podcast channel on the Gophers Slack community. So if you are on there, I would appreciate if you want to join. So it's Go Podcast in one word. And on that, I leave you with my interview with Markus. Hello, Gophers. I'm joined by Markus today. He is the author of Gomponent. So thank you very much, Markus, for joining me today.
Yeah, hi, Dominic. How's it going?
Very good, very good. So I usually start by asking guests to introduce themselves. You can talk a little bit about where you're coming from, what you are doing at the moment, and where you are going. Not really, specifically about Gomponent. We will dive deep into that subject, but just so we have a small background on yourself.
Right. So I'm Markus. I live in Denmark in a comparatively small city called Aarhus, together with my girlfriend and 2 kids. I'm an independent software developer, so I do consulting as well as building small products on the side, doing open source work, and that kind of stuff. So it's just me in my little company, and I'm very much enjoying myself.
That sounds great. When you say small project on the side, so are you building kind of software as a service and things like that?
Yeah, that as well. So trying out small products basically and seeing whether they have whether they stick, I call it. So whether they have their place on Earth, so to speak.
Sure, that's great. This is where I am as well. So we might pass a little bit of time here because it's not a secret. This is my passion. I've been building SaaS since 2008. Still trying to find something that will sustain my family. I'm a little bit in the same boat as you actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is great. So are you using Go to build your side project?
Yes, definitely I am. In fact, Go is the only language I'm using because I've really cut down my stack as a solo developer. So I really like to keep things simple and choosing my tools wisely, basically. So that if I can cut things away and not context switch as much, then I can focus on being good at that one tool. And Go is one of those tools, definitely.
That's great. When did you discover it? So first of all, have you started to program in Go directly in your career, or you had some other languages that you tried and things like that?
Well, actually, I went to Uber in 2014, so that's 10 years ago, and we used Python a lot. But after 2 years of that and both some JavaScript and some Dart, which is also a Google language, I came about this language called Go, which I thought was really weird at first. But it grew on me, I think. And then, I started using that, and now I'm using it exclusively.
That's interesting. So, okay, that's great. What about, let's switch a little bit. So I think we will do some back and forth between Gomponent and your current situation. This is very interesting.
Sure.
So I first saw, well, first of all, let's address the elephant in the room. Congratulations on the V1. I just saw, just before we started the podcast, I just saw your Reddit thread actually this week.
Oh yeah. I thought I'd get it out before we were recording, so it's been going on for a while. So basically, I want to signal that Gomponents is stable. So I've been working on it for 4 years, and that's something that people can rely on, and that they can rely on it not breaking. So I don't want to do any breaking changes if I can get away with it.
Yeah. That's great. I mean, this is a great signal for sure. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So I've seen Gomponent, and I will be completely honest. I'm always honest in this podcast. I receive the guy from Encore at some point, and I I just say what I have in my mind. When I saw Gomponent, I found it extremely interesting, but I was blocked by the fact that, oh no, man, writing HTML in Go files, it seems to be, I don't know. And I interviewed Adrian from Temple 2 or 3 weeks ago. I don't recall. So after the call, I was extremely excited about Temple, but unfortunately, it did not really work for me. I talked about that in the last episode. So when I reached out, I started to check at Gomponent and start to pass. Just don't let me being stopped by the fact that, yes, you are kind of writing HTML in Go. This is kind of I would not say a DSL, but ish.
Very DSL-like, I think.
Yeah. So I think once you pass that first initial thought, which I might imagine, a lot of people might have, it seems to be extremely interesting.
Yeah, at least I think so too, in my humble opinion. So, but maybe I should tell you about sort of the origin story for this.
Sure.
Because, I was writing a lot of React and React. I was a full stack developer basically, and writing a lot of React and Go on the back end. And once I went solo, I really missed that. But I kind of wanted to cut out JavaScript because of, a lot of things actually. But I really missed that aspect of it, that building components in a Go-like thing. So of course I started with the HTML template from the standard library, which was okay. I think you can do a lot of stuff in that. What I didn't like was passing data around, so it became cumbersome really quickly, I think, because you couldn't build new, what in React land it's called properties, so these props that you can't pass in a good way, I think, inside these templates. So you can't build new ones inside the components and pass them to subcomponents. You basically have to have this global, huge struct thing that you pass to all components if you want to do something like that, I think. Maybe that's a better way. I couldn't find it. I know I was really frustrated with that. And then I just got this idea, okay, can we build this in Go directly? And I think this was in September 2000, so it's 4 years ago. So the details escape me, but it was something. I wanted to build HTML components in Go, and I couldn't find anything that did something similar. So I think this was before Temple, and I've since found a few libraries that did something kind of similar, but. I got a prototype up and running pretty quickly, sort of spent an evening on it. Kind of liked it. Went through quite a few iterations of finding the right API. So I wanted it to feel good. I wanted to feel good using it. And then actually I listened to an episode of Go Time, the other Go podcast, and they talked about things that they didn't want to include. Or if they could take something out, what would it be? And one of them mentioned dot imports. And I thought, what's dot imports? I hadn't come across that before. And I looked it up, and you can just import all identifiers from a foreign package into your own and then use it without package prefixes. And I thought, whoa, this is great, because then basically you can skip all the package prefixes for, in Gomponent's case, it would be HTML.span or whatever. And you can just write span. And whoops, now you have a DSL-like thing, like you said. And I really liked that way of building HTML. And once you get used to the whole, okay, there's no end tag with a name on it, and it's kind of weird, but it's also kind of fun and really productive in that way. And because it's just Go everything, you don't have a build step. It's just Go functions all the way. And it started to really become something nice to work with. And I worked with it more and more and refined it, and people started noticing it and contributing to it, and we started discussing it on GitHub and stuff like that. So it's really become refined over the years. So after these 4 years now, I think it's in a really good state, actually.
Very interesting. So yeah, I'm not a fan of dot import for anything other than Gomponent.
No, me neither. For the record.
Yeah, especially as a blind person, that's one way. I also talk at Go Time at some point why I was thinking that Go is in my opinion one of the more accessible languages are there that I've tried. I have not tried all the languages, but
yeah.
And dot import is generally the only thing that I cannot say that it's very helpful. In your case, it is because we've all known HTML for so many years and things like that. So when we see div, it's clear that it's a div, span and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. So yes, I hear you all as well about the how to have component in the HTML package, the standard library template. You usually have to to create a func map with maybe a function called a map and pass some some of the sub fields of your main struct and things like that. But yes, it's not as pretty as creating component for sure.
And also, now probably the editor support is there, so you can move around quickly, especially if you call it, like I work on the JetBrains platform, so if you call it .go HTML, then it can figure out that it's a Go template and you can sort of navigate it with IDE help. I don't think that was available 4 years ago. So it's definitely become easier as well, I would say. But what I would like about doing it in pure Go is that there's the Go Please language server, and it just supports it natively, basically. So you can work around as you usually do in your Go code. You can use the debugger if you need that for some reason. So all the tooling is there already for you. I've just started looking at building my own language server just to see if I can get that sort of, for example, syntax highlighting that in different colors that is available in my IDE for HTML that isn't for Go. But it's sort of more of a nice to have than a must have because a lot of the tooling is already there.
Interesting. Yeah. That's also a dangerous place to be potentially, because now if you are introducing some latency and things like that, but if it's just for coloring, I could imagine that might be quick. But yes, that was something with my current machine and Temple, the compilation and also the formatting. Again, I'm a blind developer, so there's a lot of things that might apply to my situation that might not apply to everyone else. But the formatting for me is also another reason why I love Go. Why I also, look at Gomponent and says this is pretty interesting, because now it's probably the Go standard formatting that is formatting all the function calls and whatnot. So this is another advantage.
Yeah. And you have all the, in a templating language, you have to basically design all these control structures around that you can then use in the template, like conditionals and looping and all that. And here it's because it's just Go, it's built in and you know it already. So it's not a different kind of syntax you have to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. So before the dot import, so I guess you were experimenting with having the smallest package name possible, something like, I don't know, HTML or something like that, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. But you can call it anything, because you can just prefix the import with whatever package alias you want to use, and you can use that. But yeah, I wanted it short, definitely, so one letter once is preferable. And I still do that sometimes because there are different packages in the components module. So we have the core module, which is just the rendering function, basically, and the core interface called Node, and a few helpers like inline conditionals and mapping and that sort of stuff. And then I have the HTML package, which is all the HTML helpers. So those are basically the elements and the attributes that exist in HTML. More or less everything. I always miss some, but someone comes along and says, "Hey, I need this." Okay, and we can merge it in.
Right.
Then I have just two helpers, actually. One is to write the document structure for HTML5. which is one of them, and the other is something I borrowed from React Land, which is just a classes helper, which is just conditionally applying CSS classes to an element, basically. But those are the sort of the core packages, so you can prefix those. I actually started to just import those as well, because then it looks very DSL-like, and if I keep it just my HTML package in my application, then I think that's fine.
Right. I guess the node, for example, I guess the node is something that you are passing. You might be passing that a lot. I guess when you are creating layouts in component that should render into that layouts, you expect some node to be passed to function.
Yeah, exactly. So basically all things in components have to do with this node interface, and it's a very simple one, just like in Temple actually. So it's called node, but it has just one function, which is render, which takes an IO writer and returns an error, and that's it. So if your component satisfies that interface, then you're good, and you can plug into the whole components ecosystem. So every HTML element and attribute in the library satisfies that interface, but it's very easy to create your own components. So what I do is usually just have a function in an HTML package of my own in the application, and then that function returns a node, and then I just return div and then my whole component tree and pass in the data and whatnot.
So I have might be a weird question, but let's say
bring it on.
Is the top level function going to receive a lot of data? Because let's imagine we are building something very simple. We will have a current user. We are building a to-do list, for example. That's an easy example. So when you are on your HTTP handlers, you will call the function which represent the top level layout, and this layout should receive everything that all the component in that page will need.
Yes, basically.
So how are you doing that as someone that is using your library a lot? Do you create structure that you just pass this structure and from calling this sub component in the layout you are only passing parameters at some point, or you are keeping structure all the way and things like that? How are you doing that?
I usually have one, let's call it global properties. So I think I call it page props most of the time, which is the things I always need for every page, basically. So the title, the description for the HTML page, but also stuff like, is there any user authenticated? So set that. Also pass a request context, perhaps, so you can do cancellation if you need that. But having this one global struct that every page gets that I can rely on, then I can do global stuff like showing the header on a page, for example, the navigation bar, figuring out on what page am I currently, and stuff like that. So if I think something is applicable to all pages, then I put it in that. But otherwise, I actually keep it as function parameters to that individual page, because I like the explicitness of seeing, okay, what kind of data does this page depend on? And then that makes it so I don't actually use testing a lot for my HTML components, but if I would do that, then it would make it very easy to pass in the data that I want to display, and then make sure that it displays it in the right way.
Interesting. So this global page structure, I guess you are receiving. Let's say you have a layout called whatever, main page or root or whatever. This is the name of the function. So you would technically receive two parameters for that function: your global page object and also the list of to-dos for that page, for example, in a to-do application.
Yeah, exactly. So you would take a slice of whatever model you have to do, and then you can display that in declarative fashion that we also know from React.
Interesting. Yeah. What is the group object or functions? I was not sure about that one. The if I understand, but
Yeah.
the group I'm not sure.
So basically, it was something I needed in conjunction with the map. So map was something I implemented before generics was a thing. I think I started the project when it was Go 1.15, I think, where we didn't have generics. And I wanted something to easily map my data to components, basically. So I added the map function, but because I couldn't render it directly, I needed to sort of group it so there would be something that could satisfy the node interface and then be injected directly into my components. And that's basically what it was. So it's actually one of the things that was changed recently. So instead of being a function, it is now a slice type. So a group is just defined as a slice of nodes, and it can render directly. So it's satisfied node itself. So that means that you can now just call map, and then on your data, and then you have your callback function to do the mapping, and that result actually returns a group directly, and then that you can just put it into your component wherever it accepts a node.
Got it. Yeah. Interesting.
And then, so basically, it also for a lot of people using HTMX, they often want to render basically a list of nodes, but having a nice syntax for it. And group enables that as well, without having a parent component.
Interesting. Yeah. Speaking of HTMX, how would you add the HX attributes and things like that on elements that are not really HTML element at the end of the day?
Yeah. Well, they are HTML attributes actually, and I actually have a components-HTMX library as well to show off this kind of functionality, because it's also something I use in my own projects. What I usually do is import this module with the HX prefix, and then it has all kinds of helpers inside the library that also satisfy the node interface. So if you've got that imported, then on your, let's say, your input component, then you can do hx.post and then give it the attribute value as you usually would in a string, and then it just works like that.
Because the attributes are variadic parameters?
Yes, exactly. So basically all elements that can accept children have variadic variadic node slice at the end. I don't know what it's called, but
okay.
Yeah. So for example, you have the div, and then there's nothing in the helper that is specific to div. It's just, okay, you can now give it 0 to many nodes as children, and it'll just render those, basically.
And if one of those nodes is an attribute, it will not render that into its content. It will be.
Yeah, exactly. So it does a 2-pass render internally, actually. So it first it writes out the name of whatever parent component we're using, or parent element, I guess, and then does a pass recursively to check whether there are any attributes, because we can have groups as well. And then you write out the attributes, basically, check all your children. Then you check all your children again, write out the elements, or those node that are element type, I call it, and then finish off the element by writing the closing tag, and that's it.
Interesting. So do you discipline yourself then? Because, correct me if I'm not understanding correctly, but that would mean that I could have inside a div a first parameter that would be an attribute. The second one could be the child itself, and after that another attribute.
Yeah, you can definitely do that. I wouldn't recommend it.
No, but it's possible, right?
Yeah. Okay. But in general, actually, that's a good point in general, because I'm not doing any validation on whether you're writing good HTML. So you can do all kinds of weird stuff. So the only thing that's guaranteed, which I guess writing raw HTML doesn't do, is that the end tags are written in the correct place, because you can't like do div span diff end, span end, like you could in HTML, because it's a function call, so it'll write that naturally. But otherwise, yeah, I'm not doing any validation on the HTML at all, and that's very much by design, because I don't want to open that kind of worms that is HTML validation. I'll leave that up to the browsers, basically, and other tools.
Yeah. So what about, let's say, Alpine.js? What about if I would want to write any kind of things to this element itself? Do I have a way to pass, I don't know, a map of a string potentially that would goes directly as is in the attribute list for that element?
So do you mean passing data to JavaScript?
Well, it's not really JavaScript. So in Alpine, let's say we have a button. I could have a @click equal and do something. Let's say set a variable to true, for example. Or let's say we have a drop down. So when you have a drop down, you have a button which is the trigger, and there's an attribute in HTML which is the @ with click, and that tells Alpine to register a click event for that button, for example.
Okay. Yeah, I've never used Alpine, but I think I get it. Yeah, you would probably have your own components that have these, like a click attribute, for example, which name is @click, and the value is whatever you provide it. So I don't do any validation on the attribute values apart from that you can't break out of the attribute value scope. So basically check that you can't write something that breaks out of that scope. So I take that directly from the HTML template package in the standard library.
Nice.
But otherwise, you can write JavaScript. And by the way, you can also inject raw strings. So I've got a raw function where you can write whatever. Because essentially what Gomponent is a glorified string builder. So the standard component elements, when you write those, and make sure that it's valid HTML and it escapes the right characters if you need to. But you can also inject them with raw, and then you can write anything. So if you need to put in CSS in line or JavaScript in line, you can do it that way.
Nice. Have you done any kind of benchmarking? Because I suppose that, let's say we are building a decently sized UI application. We will have a lot of functions called. Have you done any kind of benchmark between an HTML template versus Gomponent? Because each time that the page is requesting, that an handler is running, we are rerunning all of those things.
Yeah, exactly. I would say yes and no. Yes, because I've done some benchmarking to see that things are not totally off. What I haven't done is extensive testing on how it behaves. I mean, I've been running components in production on my sites for several years and never hit any issues, even when hitting the front page of Hacker News. So I have great trust in that it works. But I haven't done a one-to-one comparison to build the exact same HTML pages in, say, standard library HTML template, temple, and components, for example. The reason is that I know this is all just function calling underneath, and we're writing to the IO writer. And I know there's not really anywhere where I see a lot of problems. Maybe it could still happen, of course. So especially with respect to maybe there are a lot of allocations and the garbage collector has to work really hard. I haven't seen those problems myself. But I've been thinking recently actually about building a sort of a big document structure and then doing the benchmarking and tweaking a few things and then seeing if it has any sort of, if anything changes, if it has any, what's it called? I'm missing a word here.
Performance
consequences.
Issue. Yeah.
That's the word. Totally. If there are any consequences.
Yeah, it seems to be extremely quick. I was just curious about that, but yeah.
Yeah, so, understandably, and you're not the first to mention it, but I think also it's important to keep in mind where are the bottlenecks in a typical application, in a web application. And,
totally.
And it's often, I mean, you have to talk to the database probably a few round trips anyway. That's probably over the network, and also your users over the network. So compared to that, components is pretty insignificant. So it's only, I would start worrying if this became a problem on, for example, memory allocation or something like that,
right.
where you can't have many concurrent connections because your server will run out of memory. That I would consider to be a bug, and I would start looking at that if there's something to be improved there. But otherwise, I'm fairly confident that it's in a good state.
Nice. Speaking of database, what are you using in your side project? Do you use SQL C, for example?
I do a lot of SQLite. I'm actually a big fan of it. So I like Postgres if the project requires something that has a lot of data manipulation. But for the usual CRUD app, I really like SQLite.
Nice. Do you use the C driver, or you're using the Go the package name?
The transpilation one. No, actually, I use the C driver.
Nice.
I think it works nicely. So what I like about SQLite is that it is so extremely well tested because it runs on so many devices, and I have total confidence in the original C stack, and I like including that directly. So there's no possibility of introducing bugs because of the transpilation, basically.
Nice. And you're writing your all the rows and the scans and whatnot yourself?
No, I've got abstractions on top of that. So there's this nice library called SQLX. I don't know if you know it.
Yeah.
Yeah, which basically does everything I need, I think. So I'm a big proponent of writing the SQL queries myself. So I don't use any ARMs. I don't use SQLC, although it looks interesting as well.
Oh, yeah.
I just like being able to write the queries as I need them to, because I think that's very expressive and just the easiest way for me to think about what I want out of this. So I'm so used to SQL, and all tools in the world basically speak SQL if they can do anything with data. So it's just so extremely easy. And then in combination with SQLite, where you just copy this one database file around, and you can debug production by copying the database locally if you want to. And just the combination of being able to do that, you write the same SQL in your whatever GUI editor you have that you do in your application code. And I think that combination is just glorious.
Nice. So have you used a lot of other stack in terms of views and whatnot? So I'm thinking maybe Django or Ruby on Rails and things like that. So I know that you were inspired by React, but was there anything else that when you started to use the HTML package, the template, you were saying, well, I'm missing a lot of stuff. Not really only things that relates to React, or it was 100%. You were missing the creation of component in React, for instance.
So do you mean sort of extras that are nice to have when building web applications, or? Well,
yeah. I mean the views in Django and in Rails are way more advanced than what we have in the basic HTML template. So I was wondering if that would have had any kind of impact on your decision to want to build Gomponent, or it was 100% based on you wanting to maybe ditch React and just having everything in Go, for example.
That was actually pretty much it. Because when I wrote a lot of Python, I didn't write any UI code at all. That was all backend.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't actually know that well. I know Django is very known for being easy to work with and getting something out quickly that way. But I felt I had the same thing in React also, because it's the really, really great thing about React is the huge ecosystem. So everyone knows it, and you kind of know how components work. And even though there have been some weird changes, and I think it's become more complex over time, it's still at its base. It's very easy to comprehend. And I think that was the main thing missing for me. So when I first started out with standard library HTML template. I thought it was hard to figure out how you're supposed to load the templates into your application code, and then you have to name them to be able to include them in blocks. But you have two different ways of including the blocks. One is it does something if it's not defined already, and another if it's defined. And I don't know, it got surprisingly complex quickly, I think.
Yeah.
And it's not that React isn't complex, it definitely is. But the mental model of it is very easy, I think. And that's also one of the things I wanted to replicate, to not have this mental overhead when switching, when building new projects and switching between writing backend code and front-end code. That it's just easy to go back into that world and, okay, now I need to write UI. And how do I do that? And just have this mental model that's really, really easy. And just having these functions as a top-level thing where you can just dive in like you do in regular function and then see what's going on, I think, that was the big inspiration. And then, of course, how you pass data around and then do it in this declarative fashion is definitely something I've taken from React, so that you have, instead of having for loops, you have this mapping operator instead.
Yeah.
And I really like that. And that's only become easier since generics became a thing. So you can have, basically all that, when you're using components as well.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Can you walk us a little bit? Let's say you are starting a new side project, for example, today.
Yeah.
So, well, of course, you are using Gomponent. I'm interested to know, what is your structure? First of all, are you always creating, like, I don't know, a views package, and what will be inside that package? And also, if you were to pass some structure to your function, your view functions, where are those structure are defined, for example?
Right. So I've started moving things into my own little web framework, so I have some inversion of control, because writing the same thing 20 times gets old quickly. But if I didn't have that, which until recently I didn't, it would be a sort of a command main thing where all the setup code is and where you set up your dependencies, and then an HTTP package, which has the HTTP server and has the routes defined as well as the HTTP handlers, and then an HTML package, which has all the views inside them. I've ripped this from Ben Johnson, who's also a Go developer and who's done LightFS and Lightstream for SQLite. I think he had a blog post somewhere. I think it was him. He had a blog post about how he structured projects. And I thought it just really made sense, because it kind of replicates the standard library as well. So if you need something HTTP-like, you look into the net HTTP package. Of course, and if you need something HTML-like, you look into that template HTML as well. I can never remember which way it is, HTML template or template HTML. I think it's template HTML. But basically, so I structure it that way, so that when in my glue code, which is either in the command itself or some package called service, I can say SQL.database or new database, and then I get the database abstraction back, which is basically a wrapper around the standard library SQL. The same with my HTTP.server, which is just a wrapper about the standard library HTTP server. But because everything HTTP from the standard library is encapsulated in my own HTTP package, then all the glue code only has to know about my own packages and nothing from the standard library. So if I have to import something HTTP-like from the standard library, then basically I have a leaky abstraction, and I should fix that.
Interesting. And inside your HTML package, are you creating sub-packages in there, or it's like a flat...
No, it's actually very flat, yeah.
Interesting.
So I have the only exported functions are my pages and sometimes my partials if I'm doing HTMX. So basically parts of a page, which is what I call partials. But those are the pages. Then I have a lot of common components which are not exported outside the package, except if I need to test them. But I usually don't for HTML. And that's basically it. And of course, you can subdivide in different files, and because it's Go, you can easily move things around from file to file. And so I usually start in one big file, and if the need arises, I split it up basically. And it's so easy in Go because it's on the package level that everything is called from outside. So refactoring is easy that way.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. This is great. I will need to try that for sure. But again, it's nice. It's Temple and Gomponent seems to be way easier when you're starting out.
Yeah,
I'm already like 4 months in a SaaS that I'm building with my wife. Actually,
all right.
I would love to adapt something else than the HTML template.
Yeah.
Because yes, I mean I created my own small helper library to do with parsing the templates and having partials and whatnot, but it's not Gomponent for sure. It's and one thing that you just said that makes me, because I'm a huge HTMX user,
right?
I can see myself having a component. Let's continue with our to-do list example. Let's say that we have a to-do list. That is the function that receive a slice of to-do and just I don't know, prints a div, and inside there's a map to go over all the to-do and just render them.
Yeah.
So in HTMX, I could just call this small function directly and just pass the HTTP response writer directly, and that's it. I mean, this compared to what I am doing now with the HTML package, which I needed to create a completely blank raw HTML. I call it raw.html. This is my layout, which has nothing in there other than the block that something will fill in at some point. But this is it seems to be way cleaner with Gomponent, and I would not have to create a lot of files that do have the same name, that take care of rendering the thing when it's not HTMX, and when it is HTMX that do a post and I need to return this famous blog list function or component.
Yeah.
In my case, I have two paths for that, but in Gomponent, that's just one function calls. This is beautiful.
Yeah, at least you can structure it that way. I would say, because I'm also using HTMX sometimes. What I do a lot is inspect the request headers and then check whether it's an HTMX request, and then return the partials based on that. So I think you could do basically the same with the HTML template, but yeah, you have to take care how exactly you're defining your templates and which blocks. So I would have to see it to make sure.
No, sure.
The way I envision it, at least I can see it, is that it would kind of be the same, but for me at least, it's more transparent to figure out what's going on when it's components. Again, because it's in the IDE and I can click around and basically follow paths until I figure out what's going on. And what I would usually do in this case, with the to-do example, for example, is have some kind of partials for those small, like a to-do item, for example. Let's say you want to add that, and you have an input box or whatever, and you add a to-do, you push enter, and then you want something to happen on screen to make that to-do added to the list.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what I would do there is, HTMX basically calls the backend, and the backend returns this one to-do item component that you have anyway. So you would have that exported in your HTML package. And then you could do the swapping in the DOM through HTMX. But the point being that you use the exact same function code when you're first doing the full page refresh, because your page layout is also just using that partial. And then when you're doing the subsequent calls through HTMX, then you just return that partial. Yeah,
I really like that. This is what I was trying to say exactly. This is what I had in my mind. That and to me, compared to what I have at this moment, which is not terrible in the HTML template package, but again, there's a lot of repetition in files and whatnot, because just the way how I did things, and sometimes it's when you realize that it might be better, but it's already too late about that. So that's another point. How would you approach someone that would want to try Gomponent and try to insert it into an existing project?
Right. I think what I first would do is figure out, if it's an existing application, figure out one small part that gives you some pain in the way you're doing it right now, and that you would try components on. Mm-hmm. So basically you get the module, and you can start off really stupid in a way by just calling .raw, components.raw, and then injecting your strings for the things that you don't need interactiveness on. So don't convert all your HTML code to components immediately, but just call this raw thing, and then where you want something that's more intelligent, you use the components code and you build your components basically. And then try it out with that one small thing and then see how it feels. I haven't actually tried mixing HTML template and components, so I don't know how what that's like basically. But I've tried with raw HTML that I've gotten from elsewhere. So, for example, UI libraries and stuff like that, where I don't want to necessarily convert all my HTML to components, because it's just static anyway and doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense to convert that, because you're not getting that much for it basically for your work.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's what I would do. So isolate one small thing, try it out, prototype your way out of it, and try it out and see how it feels and see if you like it, and then go from there basically.
Cool. And let's return quickly to the class helper that you were mentioning. So I assume that it's probably something like a map string bool, where exactly. So what about some things like, I don't know, let's say Tailwind, because everyone is using it. I'm already tired
myself
of it,
included.
I've been using it for a long time, and it seems like once everyone is using a CSS framework, I get tired of it, but it's still pretty great.
It's a new inline styling. I like it.
Yeah, but don't you have like so many line that fill out your map if you are using, well, maybe not using this helper, but just having all of those CSS classes in Go. I don't know. It seems. Is it as easy to edit as the HTML view, for example? When you are on your editor. I do use Prettier a lot, to be frank. So right. It really helped with, I don't know, just having one attribute on each line, and okay, I'm on the class attribute. I know that I'm on Tailwind. It will be like a miles long or 1 kilometer long thing. So how is it translate to in Gomponent?
Well, you can do it in different ways. So I have this, as you mentioned, the classes helper, which is a string to bool map. So if it's true, if the value is true, you include it. Otherwise, you don't. So I don't use it that often, actually, because often what you really need is two different components that are styled differently. So that leaves me with just a regular class attribute with a long list of space-separated strings. So yeah, that doesn't get prettier in components than it does in HTML. Unfortunately. I add line breaks and try to add some structure. But no, I wouldn't call it pretty. But it definitely gets the job done, and it makes it much better than I could do myself in CSS. And I'm basically never writing CSS anymore.
Right.
It's all Tailwind and using in components because the two just fit so well together. I like Adam Wortham from Tailwind CSS. He had this nice blog post ages ago about how he really stumbled upon Tailwind CSS because he couldn't figure out naming all the things and in CSS. And you don't have to in this way because you just have the components and then you have these inline styles. And they are really tightly coupled in a good way. So yeah, it's not perfect, but I don't think there is any perfect solution. It's all trade-offs all the way down. And I think, looking at these long space-separated strings is the pain you have for basically easily being able to build pretty components.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm with you on that. It's just...
But it's not better than HTML, no.
Yeah. It's just that when you have a screen reader, having 30 things that are read to you, it's extremely painful.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. I don't know if tooling would make that better. So basically, if you can skip some of that, or I don't know.
Yeah, usually you just go to the next line as quickly as possible because.
Yeah. So of course you can, if you in components, because it's just Go, and you can put it on separate lines and stuff. So what I often do is have the class attribute on a line on itself, so I can visually just remove that. Either by, you could of course totally make your editor do that, so collapse the thing, and you don't have to look at it anymore when you're not working on styling, and you can just work on functionality. Otherwise, at least. So I don't know if you can get your screen reader to jump that line or something like that, but that would be the equivalent, right?
Right.
And then you would have all the elements in the component that semantically do something with your data, and you can focus on those instead.
Yeah, that's interesting. Are you creating a lot of components? Are you like, I don't know, let's say you know that you will be reusing a lot of input all over the place. So are you creating a component called, I don't know, the standard input, and this is where you will use that? Same for a button, for example, instead of repeating yourself all over the place. So can you how would you approach, how do you know when you need to create a component or not?
When I find myself typing the same things over and over again, that's usually a sign I need to do it. And I think it's very much the same as when you're writing the same code that does the same thing, which has nothing to do with HTML. So in Go, it's very much, copy a little, that's fine. If you're doing it 3 or more times and it's exactly the same, then it's probably time to refactor and pull it out into a function. And that's exactly the same here. So if I'm doing it once, I'm doing a button. Okay, now I'm just leaving it like that. If I'm doing it again, okay, I'll just leave it too, because they're the same and I just copied it, but I'm not exactly sure that they're exactly the same yet. And maybe I want to change a few Tailwind CSS classes, for example. But when I'm doing it the third time, I would usually go, okay, now I'm tired of writing it. I'm going to pull it out into a function that creates a component and isolate the variable stuff and make those parameters, etc.
This is where I was thinking earlier when I was wondering if you were creating some kind of sub packages. I would imagine myself creating sub packages that would not be exported. Well, they would need to be, but they would never be called from the handlers, of course. So they would just be like helpers and things like that.
Yeah, and what I've started doing is pulling it into my own little web framework. So it's and then very much because I want to. My aim is to build a lot of different products and try them out, because I'm bad at market research. So I want to be able to build things quickly and try them out instead of thinking endlessly about whether it's a good idea or not. So because I think luck is a big part of all this. So basically what I'm doing is pulling these out into my web framework where I have this HTML package as well with all the components I'm usually using that are more high level than HTMLs themselves. And that's basically what you would find in your usual component library, like the buttons and the input boxes and maybe the forms and the sign up stuff, and the list goes on.
I think having a library already done. Am I mistaken? But there's already a couple of that are done for, I think, Bulma, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, there's a few people who've done Bulma CSS, which I actually used back in the day too. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people are still using it. That someone made a component thing for that. A lot of icons as well. So I did one myself called Hero Icons, but There's also Iconify, and I forget the name of the last one. Let me just check. I have it right here. It was Lucid Icons.
Right.
Because it lends itself easily to being extensible because it's just this one interface, and if you satisfy that, then you can include it in the component ecosystem. Basically.
I would assume having using a package, let's say hero icon, for example. I want I don't know the chevron down or whatever. It's way better to call that than having the SVG with the path in line.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but it ties together nicely, I think. So I actually had SVG support in components, but I removed it before the version 1 release because I found that it rarely made sense to have like the SVG elements like path and group and whatnot, to have those available as a Go function versus just having the SVG top level element and then just passing a raw string in, basically. Because SVGs don't mutate based on state you pass into them. They're always the same. You probably change size and color and stuff like that based on, in my case, Tailwind is CSS. So I just put classes on it and call it a day.
Right.
And I didn't want to support that, basically. So I took most of it out. Now I have the SVG top level element, and the rest is gone. And you can either include it through, with embedding, for example, so embedding SVG files and then putting them in as strings or just putting in string literals.
Is the final HTML that is output, is it any kind of I don't know, minified or is it different than what the structure is in Go, for example?
No, because components is a glorified string builder, so it puts in the strings into the IO writer and that's it, and it doesn't do any post processing. And again, that's intentional. So using something like Prettier, for example, is something a lot of people do. And you can do that. But by default, it doesn't even put in new lines. So it just spits out this huge, long line of HTML. So I guess you could call that minified by default.
Oh, right. Okay. So there's no line feed anywhere in there?
No, not unless you put one in yourself.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. That's good. So what is the future for Gomponent? Where, we've talked at the beginning. You just announced the V1, which is extremely exciting. What is coming next for this package?
Actually, I would say hopefully not a lot.
Yeah,
because I just like having this very stable, mature module out that hopefully doesn't change a lot. Yeah. But what I would like is something that's more outside the module. So if people start building components and sharing them and making more of an ecosystem like the one that's available in React. I don't have any intentions or hopes for making it as big as React. I don't think we're going to succeed with that in Go land. But yeah, having people share this a lot, actually like Temple. So Temple has really gone off in popularity,
Right.
and people are building all kinds of stuff. And I've seen some of that, but not as much. So, and I guess it's also, it's because some people prefer the HTML syntax and really don't like really, really don't like the components way of building things. And I think that's fine. And some people prefer the components way of doing it with, having pure Go and no build step and all that. But having people start building components and sharing them with each other and sort of making it a nice way of not having to reinvent every component every time you need it, build a new project. I think that would be really cool. And I'm working on that myself. I want to start building more high-level components and putting it inside this components gallery repo that I just made a few days ago.
And what is the backing CSS? Is it Tailwind as well for that?
I haven't quite figured that out yet, to be honest, because I'm not intentionally not doing anything that's bundling of any kind. So there's no CSS, no JavaScript bundling, and I'm not sure what the best way forward for that is. Because when I'm building apps myself, I have this Tailwind command line interface utility, which basically looks at all the Go files, pulls out the class strings, and then builds a small CSS bundle based on that, right? Yeah. I don't know how that would work with something that's exported elsewhere. So I think right now that's something that people would have to include themselves. Of course, you can make life easier by sharing configuration and all that, but I think that's actually something that the last step application would have to do. So look inside the modules, and when building those, pulling out the Tailwind CSS classes and then including that in the top level CSS bundle.
But give us an example. So what kind of component are you thinking of putting there, for example?
Well, I guess the usual stuff. So tables, making that easier, or buttons, and all the things that you expect from a sort of a UI library. So I don't intend to build a UI library myself.
Right.
I just want to underline that. I'm not a very good designer or anything. But it's more the stuff that I always use that I don't want to keep rewriting and might as well share. So including favicons in your HTML template, or open graph tags, or Twitter cards,
right?
Stuff like that as well, which doesn't need any styling, and it's very easy to just include like that. But I'm not sure how much of that there is that is really reusable. It also might just be that it's easier to take one of these, and instead of including it as a module, you copy-paste the component into your own code and then modify it as you need it. So I think that has a lot of value. Yeah. And I think what a lot of people are asking for is, well, how do I get started using this? And so it's not as much as reusing components as it is, okay, what is a good structure of doing this? And for that, I have an example application inside the components library, but I also want to do a more full-fledged, okay, if you were to use components and HTMX and Tailwind CSS and put it in a Docker container and deploy it to production somewhere, what would that look like? And I basically have that already. I just need to pull it out and put it into an example repo.
Nice. So, and you also have a Go course, right?
I do, yes.
Yeah, nice.
Building cloud apps in Go, it's called. I use components also. A slightly older version, but that doesn't really matter because things have been pretty stable. But it's very much in the same, what should I call it, aesthetic. So I'm teaching people to build Go web applications and put them in the cloud, and then use the cloud building blocks that are available. So S3 object stores and Postgres database and a stable queue, SQS in this case, and how do I send out emails, both marketing and transactional, and sort of building a little, basically the canvas for a tiny SaaS web app where you have newsletter sign up and authentication and also stuff like alerting and metrics and logging and stuff like that.
Nice. So you have a great domain name. I wonder if the Go team will contact you at some point, right?
I don't think I have a trademark on this. I'm not sure that's possible, but
no, that was a joke.
Yeah, but it's golang.dk.
Yeah,
DK
exactly.
is for Denmark.
This is interesting.
I was quite surprised I could get it, but it was taken once before, but it expired and I got it. So
Nice.
I think that's quite nice.
So I guess if people want to connect with you, that's a good way. The Gomponent website. We will have all the links in the show notes. So do you have a closing comment or thoughts? Is there anything I don't know, anything missing in Go? Anything that you would like to see, or just want to close on that?
I think I want to close on a bit different. I'd like to just say people try components. If you don't like it, perfectly okay. Understandable. It's weird at first. You can get through it. But start sharing stuff. I really like to see what people are building with this and see if we can expand the ecosystem a bit so we can have kind of what we have in React so we can start building applications faster.
Nice. And in my case, I will restate what I've said multiple times. Maybe it's just me, but if someone would create a dead easy UI, like a kit, something that would just be there to create web application that is similar to what we have on the desktop, for example, I think I would jump on that. For me, I'm kind of, and I've been building web applications since 2000. I mean, I've seen HTML3, I've seen HTML4, and now we're HTML5. Yeah. It's very nice. Don't get me wrong, but at some point I'm a little bit fatigued about CSS and things like that. I just want a good looking, thing. I just want to put a button on the place, not have to style it. It just looks good. That's all I want.
All I want for Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah. I might do that at some point, but no, I won't. Thank you, Markus. It was great. I will try it for sure. Maybe we can have a version 2 of this call a couple of months down the line and see how things are going. So
and reach out if you hit any problems or have comments, because I love hearing from people.
Sure. Thank you. I will try that, because to be frank, I was excited about Temple, but yes, the tooling was a little bit rough for me with my screen reader and things like that. So this is why maybe Gomponent is more my fit now, because yes, I can rely entirely on the Go tooling, which it's there for me. So
yeah, let me know how that goes. I'd be very interested in that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, and I encourage everyone to check your course and check your Go Gomponent. It's a great project.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great talking to you.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right, that's it for this week. I would really appreciate if you can talk or share about this podcast. It's always helpful. Also, another way to support this show is by purchasing my course. There's always a link in the show notes. So on that, see you next week.